Okay, well, it's now time for our final panel of this conference, where we do turn to look into the future, to peer into the future. And I'm delighted that to guide us, we have a Churchill College alumnus, Malcolm Chalmers, Deputy Director General of the Royal United Services Institute, research interests in defence, foreign and security policy and nuclear issues, and he has served as a special advisor to Parliament's Joint Committee on the National Security Strategy since 2011. So I think ideally placed to help us negotiate this large and very complex panel. Malcolm.
Well, thank you very much indeed. It's a great pleasure to be here, and can I thank Churchill College for putting on this event. On one level, I deal with this sort of issue every day in managing our research program at RUSI, but very often we're focused at a more operational policy level. What are we going to do about North Korea? How are we going to encourage the government to take forward its anti-corruption agenda? What are we going to do about potential new defence industrial discoveries and new technologies? And it's very refreshing, I think, to have this opportunity to reflect a bit and stand back a little bit more and look at the big picture. So I'm really excited by what we've heard so far today, but also with the potential for this great panel you have before you, who are, I think, going to take a very diverse range of approaches to these issues. It's going to be very interesting indeed. I will introduce each speaker as they are going for our final presentation. I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Makram Khoury-Machool, who specializes in politics and mass media communications. He did his PhD at SOAS, and he's a founding director of the European Centre for the Study of Extremism. Makram, over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. And with the support of Michael Lewis and the Bursar, I think that Alan Packwood and Andrew Riley have organized a most magnificent conference, and thank you for that. Here is a condensed statement, actually. This statement focuses on the dialectics of media convergence and the way it is intertwined with wars in 21st century. It argues that media in wars cannot be discussed in isolation and should be viewed as a form of political communication in their own right, and thus considers these texts within broader political, cultural, linguistic, socio-religious, and psychological contexts. So what happened in the last century, and since the First, the Second World War, the Vietnam War, and definitely in the last 25 years, since the war on Iraq, and since the CNN had, with Peter Arnett, its live coverage from Baghdad, and up until now, during the war on Syria. The main development has been media convergence, which is defined as an observable fact that connect data communications, technologies, computer and their networks together alongside media content. In fact, it is the byproduct of the use of the digitization of media content and the availability and access of one to many and many to many. A short definition would be that media convergence transforms established industries, services, and work practices by enabling entirely new forms of content to emerge. When discussing the media, especially in the context of war, we need to disentangle what I saw in the above mentioned paragraph as the four main really issues, being one, data, two, content, and there is a difference here, I'll come to this, technology and cyber. Let's start with data. Avoiding biased news for now, I'd like to broadly define news as impartial and relating to facts defined by the 5 W's: why, who, where, when, and why, and where. Nonetheless, depending on the news outlet, of course, which covers the war, more or less even most agencies, news agencies, have been biased. But most of them, of course, whilst supporting this side or another, they have been trying to somehow look impartial. What has changed in the realm of news, however, speed, frequency, volume of news items, high quality photography, of course, and instant journalism. It's known, of course, as citizen journalism. The immediacy of reporting through the internet via independent youth journalists, for example, reveals the hidden potential of new media for the counter-hegemonic old bias, which was in the mainstream media. Furthermore, and although it is not a new phenomenon, news production is flowing not only from the north and the west to the south, but for the first time, it's flowing from the south to the north. 2, media content. From past wars, especially the First and the Second World War, we came to realize that there are 4 models of propaganda. There was the Soviet, the German, the American, and then the British. Apart from news items, propaganda is used by all parties, frankly, equally, especially if there are strong parties. The discourse of propaganda can take different forms, of course, not only news, features, literature, comics, etc., etc. Nonetheless, existing ideologies adapt to the reality of social media and create media war rooms, which are actually cohorts of social media marketing activists producing and disseminating messages of particular campaigns, whether it's in Russia, Palestine, Nicaragua, or Sudan. Still, sets of norms and beliefs inform media behavior and highlight the difference between the past and the future. Here, of course, the paradigm of censorship or self-censorship versus sensationalism prevails. Yesterday we heard one of the generals talking about sensationalism. I think that it's down to a set of values and beliefs. 3, the advancement of technology and its availability. In the past, technological advancement meant informational hegemony. However, the availability of cheap technology and has decentralized the control of media by the North or the West. Whilst in many past wars, the flow of information came from the North, in the last 25 years, this control has been challenged and at times diminished. The principal political communications of war have changed radically since the occupation of Iraq in 2003. First, the introduction and increased availability of new information communication technologies has allowed disparate resistance groups greater access to new global media. Secondly, the creation of new social media platforms and their individual and organizational use have circumvented centers of political power, military control, and tight censorship. For example, airing Saddam's execution by hanging in December 2006 was also evidence of the role of low-cost communication technology, such as the mobile phone, in military conflicts mediated in modern times, which demonstrated a set of values and psychological warfare they chose to conduct, i.e., those who decided to air these footages. This was seen 10 years ago in studies I conducted elsewhere as a sign to the later mediated beheadings which have been conducted by the various brands of Al-Qaeda and Daesh. Because if you think what is Daesh, you will find out that it's a combination of those who fought in Afghanistan and some of the unemployed formerly Saddam's soldiers, unemployed Saddam soldiers. 4, media and cyber war. In some armed conflicts of war in the 21st century, we've been witnessing 2 types of confrontation involving the media and an army. First, when the army of one country or non-state actor intentionally targets and destroys the media facilities and ability to broadcast of a news institution. Look at what happened in Iraq when a few buildings were actually targeted by the Americans, or what happened in the Second Palestinian Intifada when the Israelis targeted the Palestinian broadcasting facilities. In such circumstances, organizations or activities who act mostly underground and in an ad hoc conditions in a war understand that whilst they are militarily inferior, they can only really be present in the war if they produce and transmit via new technologies, political communications of their own despite the physical attack by a particular army. For example, by utilizing low-cost videos, productions, groups in Iraq, already in 2004 and 2005, they produced and aired kidnap videos, a study which I published elsewhere. Thus, as a result of the political communications of the occupying Western powers, no longer control the media or dominate the global discourse of sanitized war coverage. And obviously, whilst there is this combination of hardware and software, there is always as well this division between the first type, which is the attacking facilities and narrating a story by one party, and of course the other category, which is the cyber attack. And cyberspace here has merely extended the battlefield and should be viewed as the fifth, perhaps, battle space alongside the traditional ones, land, sea, and space. And I'd like to give here two examples and then finish. One category, for example, of this cyber attack comprises political activities worldwide expressing solidarity with a particular cause. You've got, for example, some in Pakistan or in Bangladesh or in South Africa acting as activists, and then they are expressing solidarity by posting media, of course, or items via social media. But on the other hand, some IT experts who are sympathizers of a particular cause, what they can do is they can in fact launch an attack, a cyber attack, and therefore this is called hostile actions but short of warfare. This happened in a few cases, in a few conflicts in the Middle East. Conclusion, broadly speaking, there are two new roles in ongoing military conflicts. The model which deals with the content and aims at shaping public opinion peacefully throughout media conversions, or what is called non-military threat. Despite its peaceful nature, this can have immediate results in psychological warfare and can affect politics and decision-making. And the second model, which aims at causing damage and disruption amongst the lives of the enemy and particularly paralyzing media conversions and beyond. And I think that the latter is on the rise. Thank you.
Makram, it's always fantastic at a conference like this, and you get to the end and you're still introducing really important new dimensions to the discussion. Inevitably, you hold a one-day seminar on war, and there are endless number of possibilities to bring in. So I think very importantly, you emphasize the increasing importance of media and communications in modern warfare.